Well, hello everybody again. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to read you from my book, Eden Insights. And this one is taken from one of the last chapters of book 2. Or in my book, it's chapter 99 or chapter 20 in the second lost book of Adam and Eve. In this chapter I call it the Revolt. Verse 1. After Cain had gone down to the land of dark soil, and his children had multiplied therein, there was one of them, whose name was Ganoon, son of Lamech the blind, who slew Cain. Comment number 1. It is also mentioned in the book of Joshua that it was indeed this Lamech the blind who slew his great-great-grandfather Cain by accident with a bow, thinking that Cain, whom he vaguely could see in the distance, was a wild animal coming towards him, whilst he was with his younger son Tubal-Cain. See my book Joshua Insights, Book 1, to read the amazing details of this sad story, where Lamech the blind not only accidentally killed his great-great-grandfather Cain, but in his semi-blindness accidentally smote his youngest son on the head so hard that he also died. Lamech's 2 wives, Adullah and Zillah, forsook him for a season because of this. This is also mentioned in the Bible. Comment 3. This Lamech the blind was not the same Lamech as Lamech the son of Methusalah, who was born some 3 generations later, or in 874 years after the creation, according to the King James Bible time charts. Ganoon is also known as Jubal. But as to this Ganoon, Satan came to him in his childhood, and he made sundry trumpets and horns and string instruments and cymbals and psalteries and lyres and harps and flutes, and he played on them at all times and at every hour. Comment 5. Came to him in his childhood. It sounds here like Satan had possessed Jubal Ganoon since he was a child. And this description is later mirrored in the description of Pan the satyr, or half-goat, half-man creature, always playing a flute and enticing people through his music. This is not surprising. His father was Lamech the blind, who slew Cain, his great-great-great-grandfather, and was cursed 7 times worse than Cain because of it. Genesis 4:15. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slays Cain, vengeance should be taken on him 7-fold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. It was indeed in the time of the sons of Lamech the blind that great debauchery began on the face of the earth, in the early days, or around 450 years after creation, and 1200 years before the great flood. This is an interesting extra detail from those early times. The evil that began by the sons of Cain around 450 AC, or after creation, and the even greater evil of the fallen angels coming unto the daughters of Cain in the days of Jared, or around 650 after creation, about 200 years later, was somewhat held back around 243 years during the time of Enoch, from 743 until his translation in 987 years after creation, or about 600 years before the actual flood. As he had a lot of power over the kings of the earth, according to the Apocrypha books. Yeah, he also had the power to hold back the fallen angels as well. He could even talk to them directly. Comment 10. The kings of the earth were afraid of Enoch, and so were the evil powers too. The fallen angels, they were afraid of him too. As he had power over fallen angels, and according to the book of Enoch itself, he rebuked the fallen angels to their faces for their crimes. He was made king of kings by 120 kings of the earth, according to the book of Joshua. See my book, Joshua Insights. Comment 11. After having finished his testimony, Enoch was translated or taken up to heaven by God himself in the year 987 years after creation. His son Methusalah continued for another 200 years, instructing the kings of the earth not to go astray, as many of the children of Cain had done. Finally, everyone rejected Methuselah's witness from God in around 1187 years after creation, or something like 400 years before the flood. And from that point on, most of the children of Seth came down the spiritual mountain, joined the sons of Cain, and the world descended into chaos and lawlessness. See my books, Enoch Insights and Jasher Insights, for the complete story, and to some extent, Jubilees Insights. I knew from the Bible that Jubal was a maker of instruments, but I didn't realize in this case the instruments were made under the inspiration of Satan himself, using music to hypnotize people into some sort of trance. Of course, this is not to say that musical instruments are evil in themselves, but it's how they're used and with what spirit, either good or bad, that really matters. Genesis 4:21, and his brother's name was Jabal. He was the father of all who played string instruments, lyres as an instrument, and pipes. Comment 14. It's mentioned in the Bible that Satan was created with musical instruments embedded in his body. How strange is that? How could you have a musical instrument inside your body? Well, that's a good question. Well, anyway, look, in Ezekiel 28:13 in the Bible, thou hast been, is God addressing Satan, thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, gold, the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou wast created. Very strange. Obviously, that's because they don't live in time, where maybe size doesn't matter. In other words, there's more room to put things in, like musical instruments, in the body. That's not the only thing I've heard there about the spirit world. I've also heard about, and I'm saying this today, in 2022, I've heard about beings up there in the spirit world where they have actual weapons sort of fastened onto their arms, but it's like part of them. Stuff like that. It's a bit, yes, I suppose like advanced bioweaponry, or what you want, transhuman, if you want to put it, but in this case it's not transhuman. It's something very, very advanced, but there do exist things like that in the spirit world. That I know about. That's one of the things I do. I'm just telling you that's something new. Anyway, and it says here, and when he played on them, Satan came into them, so that from among them was heard beautiful and sweet sounds that ravished the heart. Then he gathered companies upon companies to play on them, and when they played, it pleased well the children of Cain, who inflamed themselves with sin among themselves, and burnt as with fire, while Satan inflamed their hearts one with another, and increased lust upon them. This reminds me a bit of what can happen in modern times in a big pub, when you got two opposing football teams in there, and everybody gets drunk, and then you start bashing each other up. Yeah, I'll show you how stupid that is. I remember when I was young, was 18, 19, in those days, a couple of years before I got saved, that sometimes I was given over to drinking too much. And I can remember an old friend of mine, he told me stuff they did when they were drunk you just won't believe. And of course you know about these things, you're not ignorant either, what it's like in football matches and in pubs. Well, Satan and was the one who got it all started back here with these sons of Lamech the blind, getting them into great drunkenness, and that would lead to crimes and all kind of debauchery. But I tell you, this friend of mine, friend inverted commas now, he told me that him and his brother, just for fun, they'd go round a pub where they knew there was, this is in Newcastle by the way, Newcastle. They'd go around a pub where there was two opposing teams there, or watching about opposing teams of football, and he would stand at the door, right, just the right time, we knew they'd been drinking a lot, and he'd get a chair and he'd throw it across the room, walk out the door. And then somebody would watch, and him and his brother would watch through the windows, and he would see that one person turned around and said, "Who the hell threw that chair?" And then they would start bashing each other up until the whole pub was wrecked, and they would just laugh their heads off, walk down the street. Oh my God, I associate with people like that. I shouldn't have done. But anyway, that was when I was about 18. I'd been in boarding school, it all been boys, and then I had a couple of years where I drank too much. I know, I admit that, when I was 18. But I soon learned not to be that way. I grew out of that. But I was in that time period, I was shocked how so many young men get so drunk. And this is a long time ago. I'm 70 now, so that's like 50 years ago. I hate to think what it's like today. But all that to point out how that Satan, he changed things back there in the early days, 400 years after creation. He took away the simplicity and the innocency of those on the earth and introduced them into seduction through drinking too much alcohol and through strange music that hypnotized them. And it really had the effect. And so I think that we have strong elements of that today in society too. It's just people don't recognize it, that it's a spiritual thing. It isn't just a matter of drinking too much. What does it lead to? What crimes are committed when people are intoxicated? Not to mention, of course, it's very bad for your health. Fortunately, I changed my habits 50 years ago, and I personally only drink alcoholic drink once a week, a glass of wine or one beer or something. That's it. I don't feel I need more than that amount of alcohol. But I know when I was young that when we used to go drinking with my buddies that I mentioned was 18, 19, I wouldn't even remember how I got home. Stupid things like that. And I know a lot of young people in modern times are like that. But it's very dangerous to allow yourself to get out of control like that. Satan might take advantage of you. All kind of horrors could happen to you. So drunkenness is not a good thing. But it was started here in pre-flood times. Here you go. It started about 450 years after creation. Satan inspiring the sons of Lamech the blind to get everybody drunk and to build drinking houses. Here's the origin of your pubs. And I'll continue there. And he gathered companies to play on these instruments. And when they played, it pleased well the children of Cain, who inflamed themselves with sin among themselves and burnt as a fire, while Satan inflamed their hearts one with another and increased lust among them. That's right. If you get really drunk, there's no rules. There's no rules. People forget about the rules and just do what they want. Satan also taught Ganoon to bring strong drink out of corn, and this Ganoon used Ganoon. Yes, strange name, isn't it? Well, I prefer call him Tubal, but anyway, he's called Ganoon. Apparently, this is because this Lost Books of Adam and Eve, it's had a lot of translations, and in this particular one, I think for some time it was in the hands of those in the Middle East or the Arabs for a time. And I think they saw it as a book to read with children, although I wouldn't read with children, and they put some names in here which are certainly not Jewish, like Ganoon. That's not a Jewish name or Hebrew name. It sounds Arabic. But anyway, it doesn't matter. When they had the book, they didn't do any harm to it. Just put a few names in it, basically. But it's still just as good. But there are many versions of this book. It's translated from many different languages, and this is an Arabic. It's translated from an Arabic copy in this case. So therefore you get this name, Ganoon. But the original name was Jubal in the Bible. Anyway, Satan also taught Ganoon to bring strong drink out of corn, and this Ganoon used to bring together companies upon companies in drink houses, and brought into their hands all manner of fruits and flowers, and they drank together. Sounds like another powerful evil spirit or demon was introduced to mankind, Bacchus, the demon god of drinking and, more importantly, addictions. Verse 6 and 7. Thus did Ganoon multiply sin exceedingly. He also acted with pride and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness, which they knew not, and put them up to manifold doings which they knew not. Again, I say it's like that when you're young and you're in a football match or you're all drinking too much. Before you know, you've done something, don't remember it, and you're suddenly at home asleep in your bed sick. Don't even remember how you got there. That's pretty much how it was. Awful. You don't want to live like that. Thus did this Ganoon multiply sin exceedingly. He also acted with pride and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness. Yeah, I said that. Then Satan, when he saw they yielded to Ganoon, hearkened to him in everything he told them, he rejoiced greatly, increased Ganoon's understanding, until he took iron and with it made weapons of war. As far as the Bible says, it was not Jabal who invented the weapons of war, but his brother Tubal-Cain. Genesis 4:22. And Zillah she also bare Tubal-Cain, the forger of every cutting instrument of brass and iron, and the sister Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Tubal-Cain is mentioned as being the first blacksmith. He was a descendant of Cain and son of Lamech the blind and Zillah. Here we have a situation which shows the serious dangers of compromising with evil. It proved to be a bad idea for the sons of Seth to intermarry with the children of Cain the murderer, and eventually led to their subsequent complete downfall in the centuries to come, except for Methusalah, Lamech, the good one, and Noah. Righteous sons of Seth, as was brought out in the early centuries, AD, really? There were very few good sons of Seth. Most of their descendants died in the great flood, wherein according to the Bible only 8 souls were saved. Noah, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. All the rest had compromised and blatantly become very evil. Noah and his sons warned the world for 120 years whilst they were building the Ark of God. And this started happening 1538 years after creation. The great flood eventually came in 1658, 120 years later. Book of Jasher 2:17. And Lamech the son of Methusalah became related to CAIN by marriage, and he took his 2 daughters for wives. And Ada conceived and bare a son to Lamech and called him Jabal. She conceived again and bare a son to Lamech and called him Jubal. Canaan was a son of Enos, who was a son of Seth, who was a son of Adam. Cainan was born 325 years after creation, according to the King James Version of the biblical time charts. Then, when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. One man used violence against another to teach him evil, taking his children, defiling them before him. Think of such horrors. The world's going that way. Pedophilia. Comment 21. How sick and depraved the world became in the early days after creation, or from the 3rd century after creation, and started by the sons of Cain. Verse 9 through 11. And when men saw they were overcome, and saw others that were not overpowered, those who were beaten came to Ganoon, took refuge with him, and he made them his confederates. Then sin increased among them greatly, until, here's a verse I mentioned in one of my discourses last week. This sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own sister, or daughter, or mother, and others, or the daughter of his father's sister, so there was no more distinction of relationship, and he no longer knew what iniquity is, but did wickedly, and the earth was defiled with sin, and they angered God the judge who had created them. But Ganoon gathered together companies upon companies, played on horns, on all the other instruments we have already mentioned, at the foot of the holy mountain. And he did so in order that the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, should hear it. Comment 22. Satan had total control in the above situation of the sons of Cain. Now he wanted to use them to entice the righteous sons of Seth to come down from their mountainous abode far above them, using musical instruments to seduce them into coming down from their righteous mountain. Verses 12 and 13. But when the children of Seth heard the noise, they wondered and came by companies and stood on the top of the mountain to look at those below, and they did this a whole year. When at the end of that year Ganun saw that they were being won over to him little by little, Satan entered into him and taught him to make dyeing stuffs for garments of diverse patterns, and made him understand how to dye crimson and purple and whatnot. Comment 23. We see that sometime later in the generation of Jared, the fallen angels came to the earth to pollute the earth and its wicked ways even more. Verses 14 and 15. And the sons of CAIN who wrought all this, and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel, gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor, with horns and gorgeous dresses, and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Meanwhile the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised God in the place of the holy angels who had fallen. Wherefore God had called them angels, because he rejoiced over them greatly. Comment 24. God will certainly not call his children angels, as it says in scriptures that God puts no trust in his angels. Why? Probably because a third of them betrayed him. See the next chapter concerning the false doctrine of the unrighteous children of Seth, being the ones who came down to the licentious daughters of Cain and not fallen angels. Doctrine created by the Catholic Church around 3rd to 4th century AD. Wow. And I think that's one of the reasons they tried to ban the Book of Enoch, because the Book of Enoch, which was banned for 1,000 years by the Catholic Church, I think because they didn't want people to know about the fallen angels were the origin of a lot of the evil, not the sons of Seth. Anyway, sons of Seth did not fit the angelic description of what happened in the Bible itself. Job 4:18. See Genesis 6, by the way. All right, Job 4:18. Behold, he puts no trust in his servants, and charges angels with folly. Revelation 12:9. And a great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. But after this they no longer kept his commandment, nor held by the promise he had made to their fathers. But they relaxed from their fasting and praying, and from the counsel of Jared their father. And they kept on gathering together at the top of the mountain, not a good idea, to look upon the children of Cain from morning until evening, and upon what they did, upon their beautiful horses and ornaments. Then the children of Cain looked up from below, and saw the children of Seth standing in troops on the top of the mountain, and they called them to come down to them. But the children of Seth said to them from above, We don't know the way. Then Ganun the son of Lamech heard them say they did not know the way, and he bethought himself how he might bring them down. And then Satan appeared to him by night, saying, There's no way for them to come down from the mountain on which they dwell. But when they come tomorrow, say to them, Come ye to the western side of the mountain. There you will find the way of a stream of water that comes down to the foot of the mountain, between two hills. Come down that way to us. Then, when it was day, Ganun blew the horns and beat the drums below the mountain, as he was wont. And the children of Seth heard it, and came as they used to do. Then Ganun said to them from down below, Go to the western side of the mountain. There you'll find the way to come down. But when the children of Seth heard these words from him, they went back into the cave to Jared to tell him all they had heard. Then when Jared heard it, he was grieved, for he knew that they would transgress his counsel. After this, 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together and said unto themselves, Come, let us go down to the children of Cain, see what they do, enjoy ourselves with them. But when Jared heard this of the 100 men, his very soul was moved, and his heart was grieved. He then arose with great fervor, stood in the midst of them, and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, Let not one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain, which our fathers have ordered us to dwell. But when Jared saw that they did not receive his words, he said unto them, O my good and innocent and holy children, know that when once you go down from this holy mountain, God will not allow you to return again to it. He again adjured them, saying, I adjure you by the death of our father Adam, by the blood of Abel, of Seth, of Enos, of CAIN, and of Mahalaleel, to hearken to me and not go down from this holy mountain. The moment you leave it, you will be bereft of life and of mercy, and you shall no longer be called children of God, but children of the devil. But they would not hearken to his words. Enoch at that time was already grown up, and in his zeal for God he arose and said, Hear me, O you sons of Seth, small and great, when you transgress the commandment of our fathers, go down from this holy mountain, you shall not come up hither again forever. But they arose against Enoch, and would not hearken to his words, but went down from the holy mountain. And when they looked at the daughters of Cain, and their beautiful figures, and their hands and feet dyed with colour, and tattooed, and ornaments on their faces, the fire of sin was kindled in them. Then Satan made them look most beautiful before the sons of Seth, as he also made the sons of Seth appear of the fairest in the eyes of the daughters of Cain. So the daughters of Cain lusted after the sons of Seth like ravenous beasts, and the sons of Seth after the daughters of Cain, until they committed abomination with them. But after they had just fallen into this defilement, they returned by the way they had come, tried to ascend the holy mountain, but they could not, because the stones of that holy mountain were fire flashing before them, by reason of which they could not go up again. God was angry with them, and repented of them, because they had come down from glory, and thereby lost or forsaken their own purity or innocence, and were fallen into the defilement of sin. And then God sent his word to Jared, saying, These thy children whom thou didst call my children, behold, they have transgressed my commandment, and are gone down to the abode of perdition of sin. Send a messenger to those that are left, they may not go down and be lost. Then Jared wept before the Lord, and asked him mercy and forgiveness, but he wished that his soul might depart from his body, rather than hear these words from God about the going down of its children from the holy mountain. 37:38. But he followed God's order, and preached unto them not to go down from the holy mountain, not to hold intercourse with the children of Cain, but they heeded not his message, and would not obey his counsel. And that's the end of chapter 99, or chapter 20 in the second Lost Book out of Eve. Well, do get my book, Eden Insights. I think you'll find it an absolutely fascinating book. I certainly have, working on it. I'm always learning a lot from the Lost Books out of Eve. So, have a great day, everybody. Bye for now.